Yeah, it has. That's worked.
Yeah, we're live.
I think we're live. Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys. Thank you for everybody who's jumped over from the FFTV stream. Welcome to the FFTV FPL Game Week 2 preview. And I've got another one of my football friends with me, Lemmy. Good to see you, bud. Thank you for joining me, man. How
No
you
worries,
feeling?
mate.
How you
Thanks for
doing?
having me.
No, it's great to have you. I'm glad you're involved in this FFTV FPL league because the more the merrier, definitely. And
Yeah,
it's
I've got
nice
to bump up
to.
everybody else's numbers, so it's nice to be a mid-tabler for the first game week at least.
Definitely. Let me just get the comments up, and I'll have a see who are the loyal ones. Yeah, and my number one. I think this has turned into my. He's turned into my biggest fan here, Daniel. How you doing, mate? Thank you, and thank you for a shout out on the previous stream as well. But great to see everybody in here. Kyle, 007, another one of my huge fans. Well, where is he? He's gone. Harvey. Harvey, if you're getting down to any games this season, mate, any of the home games, just make sure you come down to the fan zone before the game, and we'll meet up and say hello to you and get you on maybe a little bit of a video or something. But yeah, great to see you guys in. Samir Salam, bro. And I'll be here all night if I go through the chat. But I do want to make sure I shout out our loyal regulars. Martin, great to see you, mate. Hope to see you on Friday. I forgot it's tomorrow night, man. This week's gone so quickly, guys. I don't know if it's been the same for you, but it's been busy. Eddie, how you doing? Joe, Riley, and like I said, if I do that all night, I will be here all night. Hopefully one of the guys will jump on in the back stream and help me with getting the comments up. But yeah, welcome to the second of our FFTV FPL streams, and we'll have a quick look back on last week. Because I want to obviously give a shout out to whoever's top of our leaderboard at the moment. But I had a decent week. I know Lemmy's had a decent week. It wasn't too bad in terms of points wise, but there was a few people a little bit upset with some certain performances. My new players seem to be getting a lot of stick, definitely, for not performing against Wolves. But to be fair, they should have come away with only a point from that game. But yeah, we'll get through it. But we'll start off with our leaderboard. Let me just get the right screen up so it will work. Hang on. There we go. And
here he is.
There he is. All right. Actually, we'll start off with our leaderboard. I think we'll start there. Add that to the stream. So if you guys can see it, I know it's a little bit small. I will just pick up my screen. So yeah, here's that FFTV mini league, fancy mini league. You can see top point scorer is on 96. That's just the top. Well, I was only going to do the top 10, but I need to squeeze myself in at the bottom. So I've gone top 12. But I think I'm pleasantly happy with my start. I'll go through my team in a bit, but the only thing that I wasn't sure of was Mbeumo. I ended up leaving Mbeumo on the bench, and I possibly would have actually swapped him for Gabriel in the defense, and I would have gone 3-5-2, but I didn't. But I'm happy with my points from last week. How did you do, Joe? Let me. How many? You weren't far behind now, were you?
I managed to hit perfect average out of all players. I hit 64 points, and the global average was 64 points. So yeah, pretty much bang on average. So not terrible. It's a decent football. At least I know I've not made an absolute howler and have to try and use what is it? One of my wild cards where you get to basically swap your entire team out in the first game week.
Yes. Go on. Sorry, go on.
It could have been as bad as that. I know I've had some friends in the past who've had to go down that route before, so it's not the absolute worst start I could have had, but it's given me a good idea of who I need to be kind of looking at, trying to replace in a couple of weeks' time. Just ride it out for another week. Made a couple of changes just to the lineup itself, just as how it's going to shape up, but start trying to make some tactical inroads for the next few weeks.
100%. So just while you raised the wild card situation, so what we did establish from our first stream was that we have got a nice mix of FPL viewers here. So we've got the newbies, we've got the ones who are taking it a little bit more seriously. There's the ones who are regularly playing it and the ones who casually play it and the newbies. So it's a good mix of experience. So just for those who don't know about the wild cards, in terms of you can change basically your entire squad and you get 2 wild cards a season. The first one ends 31st of December and then starts again then you got a second one which runs from the 1st of January till the end of the season. Now, tactically, the best times to play them are at the end of the transfer windows, pretty much, and just around most people do it around the 1st or 2nd international transfer. The transfer break. So it's not the transfer, sorry, the international break. I'm trying to get my words out. The international breaks, yeah. So there's a couple of international breaks coming up. I think one's after game week 4, and then there's another one after game week 6 or 8. So it's you can use those tactically, but if you are panicking, you have got the option to use a wild card and totally change your team, and it's not going to cost you any points in terms of transfer values and stuff like that. So, but if you want to play it tactically, the best time is obviously to wait until the transfer window's over, so you know which players where, and then you can have a look at changing up your team. But do make use of them because they are really good, handy tools. Because you might get to the point you think, absolutely. I did it last season. I stuck loyally to Jono and MG Dub, and early half of the season before the World Cup break, we didn't get much return from either of them, did we? So yeah, and I didn't. And then come the international break, I changed it, but I kind of didn't really follow through last season with it. Have you had any, like you said, you kind of briefly mentioned that you were tempted to almost play it, but are you going to be more tactical with your first wild card this season?
Oh yeah, I'm never going to play that wild card this early. It was only if I'd picked Kane and it got locked in and then he's gone away to Bayern and I forgot about it and didn't take him out. And then also had Timber in the team and he's now done his ACL and so he's pretty much done for the rest of the season. If you have a load of those all compounding against you in the same game week and you kind of panicking thinking, oh, I'm going to either have to dock about 16, 20 points because I've gone over the amount of allocated transfers you can have for free in a week, or do I just use my wild card? That's the only real instance I'd be looking at using it now so early, just one game week in. I mean, now it's kind of the case of if you do have Timber and obviously he's done his ACL, and just take him out straight away, use that as you transfer this week, and then try and look at having a few weeks of not making transfers so you can build up to having a week where you can make 2. But for this week, I mean, the only real disappointment was John Stone sitting out. I think we all kind of were banking on him, and he was almost a nailed on starter and a guaranteed 6 points as a central defensive or centre back, for Man City, and then he doesn't start. So he was one I was thinking about maybe taking out, but I've just put him on the bench. I'll eye it out again, and then if he doesn't play again this week, then I'll then take him out. But for now, I'm happy to just sit on it.
So even with your free transfers, obviously if you don't do a transfer, you can do one free transfer every week. But if you don't do one week, then you get a double free transfer the following week. So just bear that in mind as well, because there's a little tactical shift coming up from game week 3 that we'll touch on next week. But it might be something to be aware of. If you haven't made any transfers so far this week, it might be worth holding on to your free transfer and having 2 next week, because teams like Chelsea and Tottenham's fixtures change drastically, and they get a lot easier in terms of the FPL difficulty rating. Now, obviously, it's not set in stone. Any team can beat any team in the league in reality. But what they try to do is give you an indication of where points are likely. So games will be graded from 4 down to 2, I think is the lowest. I don't think it's a 1, or there might be a 1 as well. But there's different gradings. And if you look at Chelsea's and Tottenham's fixtures coming up from game week 3, we've got 4 or 5 games in a row against some of the weaker oppositions, according to the FPL stats. So it might be worth holding on to your free transfer this week and doing 2 next week. I was tempted to make 1, and I'll tell you what it was. I was tempted to actually bring Taiwo in for Nottingham Forest, because I really fancy I probably jinxed him now, and I probably shouldn't have said it live on stream, but you don't clip this. But yeah, I fancy Taiwo to get a couple tomorrow against the shithouses at Sheffield United. So I was tempted to bring him in, but I'm going to hold on to my free sub and use it next week. I'm just going to bring up the team of the week. So these are the players that scored the most points last week in the FPL, and as you can see, the top point scorer was Raphael Varane, and you can also see the breakdown of how he got his points. So it's always worth looking at those stats. And I've got all these stats, so you guys know, I've got all these stats off the official FPL website. So they've got everything broken down there for you. So if you're really nerdy and you want to look at stats of every single player, of every single minute they've played, they've got all the information there, and knock yourselves out. But yeah, I had a couple of these players in my team. How many of team of the week did you have in your starting lineup last weekend, Lemmy?
I had 2, mate. I had probably the obvious suspects that you'd probably see in that team of Haaland, who I captained, and then Saka, who was my vice captain for the week. They're pretty much going to be some of the top percentages for players picked in most squads, I'd have thought. I think, a lot of those names, you could probably see why they would have been picked, but there are quite a few surprises in that, which kind of does give a nice little tidbit to the joy of playing fantasy, because sometimes you can base it purely on stats and percentages and who people are picking and what games they've got coming up, and you think, oh yeah, these guys are definitely going to be locked on to get a lot of points, and then you go into this week where Rodrigo, a central defensive midfielder, is featuring in the team of the week, and then the highest scoring player for the entire week's a centre back. It's you can never predict it, and that's kind of why you can go in it with it the way that I go, with a lot of maths and stats behind it, and then sometimes it's all just the luck of the draw.
Absolutely, because I have got quite addicted to watching some of the streams, and there's some fantastic streams out there, and I will give them a shout out over the next few weeks, because I'd love to do a little bit of clout chasing as well. But there are some fantastic FPL streams out there, and they're all kicking themselves for. Most of them went with a double Man U and a double Arsenal midfield. And as you can see, Man United's attacking side of it didn't do well, but they're defensive. And I had Onana in goal, who got 9 points as well. Their defensively is where you got your points last week. I had Shaw in my defense as well. But if you look at the the stats there, Isak is another one that he started the game as a number 9, and I've got Callum Wilson in my team. He still managed to come on and score a goal, but it makes me wonder, like, should I switch him out for Isak eventually? But even Harvey Barnes came on as a second half sub, got an assist and scored a goal. So points can be picked up. It's don't always despair if the first team that you've picked they don't start, because I think a lot of teams have got improved their squad massively this season, and we've still got the 5 sub rule in the Premier League, and it does get utilized. So there will be chances for players to come on and make an impact in games, as Harvey Barnes did last week. Weiss is another one that I do like the look of, but hopefully I'll ride it out and see if I'm going to make any change in the next few weeks. But yeah, so who was top of our FPL league? And it was Taiwo FC, which is the name is Alanga Golden Boot winner, hopefully.
He's been in the chat a few times.
Yes. And so this was his team from last week. Like I say, leading our mini league at the moment. I really like the look of it. The one that I'm kind of like really tempted by is Maddison. I thought he played really well last week, and I think he's going to be a real spearhead for them now. Obviously, Kane's not there. Is these someone that you'd be tempted to bring into your FPL squad, Lemmy?
Who was that? Sorry, Maddison. I think the hesitancy for me to kind of jump and say yes or no on that is because obviously we all know he's a very good player. He's absolutely incredible for Leicester. He was always going to come back to another team in the Premier League when they went down, and then obviously getting his first cap for England and starting to play. You know he's a good player, and you know that he's going to get points over time. But coming into a brand new team and a new setup, that's always the risk of getting new players in, is when they've just been transferred to a new team. You don't know how they're going to get on with that setup, with the players that are around him who they've still got to get used to. So it is a risk, and it can pay off. Like obviously him being picked and being as a featured player in the top team in our league obviously shows, yeah, that risk can pay off sometimes. And I think it was the same with Haaland last year. There was always that debate of how do we think he's going to do in the Premier League, and people were either skeptical of picking him at all, or some people were picking him and then having him captain week in, week out. And then obviously his price then just skyrocketed after the first few games of last season. So that's the risk that you play, and it's paid off this week, but you never know. And I always try and stray away. Like I was toying with having Elanga in our team because obviously having Forest in the Premier League is the beauty of being able to pick Forest players to feature in your FPL team. So I've always had a habit last season and definitely the start of this season of having 3 Forest players in there. Elanga was one that I was kind of yo-yoing with trying to feature in my midfield, and just we don't know how he's going to start. We don't even know if he's going to start any games, and that's always a big concern. And then you don't know how he's going to feature, how he's going to get on with all these new players around him in this team and the setup. So it is a risk, but sometimes it can pay off. Obviously, with Elanga coming on and making a big contribution as soon as he came onto the pitch, you'd think that kind of might give some people a spark to think maybe he's going to kind of kick on this season for us. So you never know, and that's just the way it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's like like the heading of the show was "Don't panic," you know. But I used the example of the players, like for example, Harry Kane leaving the Premier League. This was probably since in the last 10 years probably the least amount he'd been picked anyway by FPL players, purely because of the speculation around him going. I was still surprised that he actually did go. So that's one that where people you no need to, I mean sorry, let me alluded to earlier, you've got the wild card example, but you do have the free transfers every week as well. And obviously if you bought him in, you've got a hell of a big bank balance left once you're looking to replace him. But there are obviously other key things, and we should mention is Kevin De Bruyne's injury. You mentioned Timber's injury. He's out for a while. De Bruyne's expected to be out for at least 3 to 4 months. It could be possibly longer if it, depending on if he goes for surgery and how he recovers from that surgery. And obviously there's Tyrone Mings who got an ACL injury, second Aston Villa player to get an ACL injury already this season, with Bundia as well, and that will see him out for the whole of the season. So there are a couple of players that if you've got them in your team, you're gonna definitely have to ship them out because they're not going to be getting any game time. But in terms of for me, for example, one example is Liverpool's midfield. I'd love to get some of them in, but there's no guarantee of who's going to get the game time. So it is worth holding out a couple of weeks and seeing how teams are lining up. Foden's another player. I'm hoping he'll get more game time with De Bruyne not being there, but where will he end up playing? I'd like to see him play in a more central position, but he's going to be all over the place. So until that's settled down, there might be a few players that you might want to stick on your watch list for now, and then look at putting in later on in the season. But like I alluded to already in the stream, I'm going to hold on to probably both of my transfers for next week's transfer window, because I'm looking at bringing in the likes of Maddison and probably another Chelsea player into that, because looking at their fixtures, and that's where maybe I'm getting a little bit persuaded by the FPL experts and stuff, so on and so forth. But yeah, I want to be a little bit more tactical with my team going forward this season. I'm going to bring up your team for this week, and you've made only a few changes. You've not made any transfers, but no, you have made a few changes, haven't you?
No transfers, just made changes to the lineup. I've also saw that Crypto put in a question, so I think if anyone else is new to FPL and got any questions, put them in the chat and we'll try and make sure that we get them answered. I just saw this one pop up and it kind of brings you into kind of my team and how I've got it set up. So how do the points break down, like what's a goal worth, etc. So goals are worth different points depending on what position they're allocated to. So if Haaland scores a goal, it gets him 4 points, but if, let's say, Morgan Gibbs White gets a goal tomorrow, because he's a midfielder, he gets an extra point, so that's then worth 5. And then if a defender like Varane last week gets the goal, then it's worth 6 points. So that's how
Briefly bring that up, yeah.
Varane managed to get the 6 points there because he got one goal, so that's 6 points. He kept a clean sheet, which is then 4 points, which is consistent across the board for all defenders and goalkeepers. And then obviously bonus points, which is kind of calculated at the end of the game and is attributed. One player gets 3, one player gets 2, one player gets 1 bonus point for both teams. Or that is distributed between both teams. So only one player out of all 22, or however, including subs, have been made, gets those bonus points. So it's always, which is kind of the point for the reason why I built my team. If you have a look at my back line,
let me just bring yours up.
Yeah, so my back line, I've got, other than John Stones, who I kind of picked is just a solid. I kind of picked him and I thought he's going to be week in, week out, always going to be starting to sit in the back line, and they keep clean sheets for fun. So that's kind of like just a consistent 6 points to keep the defense turning over. All of my other defenders are all fullbacks. I like to go down the route of picking fullbacks, especially ones who are quite progressive, because then obviously getting points off assists is going to turn up those points as well, because otherwise defensively all you're going to get as a centre back is just clean sheets. That's the only thing you can really hope for points. So that's why I've got Alexander-Arnold. Obviously sometimes progresses more as a midfield player and then takes corners, so that gives you more assists. Stupinian for Brighton as a fullback. And then obviously I've got Aina for us, just because I feel like he's going to be starting fullback on the left, as opposed to trying to toggle between, is Aurier going to start or is it going to be Nico Williams? If it was Nico Williams week in, week out, then that'd be more one that I consider. But for Aina, I just think, always going to be easy. And then for goalkeepers, obviously, I know one of the discussions last week was, do we want Onana in or out? Because it's quite a high ticket item for a goalkeeper. Sometimes that is the route to go, just getting like a good goalkeeper you know is always going to keep clean sheets. But I've gone for obviously Steele and Turner. Turner just for the Forest contingent, and I know he's always going to start probably at the moment anyway. But for goalkeepers, you get, I think it's an extra bonus point for every save that they make.
Yes.
And then obviously if you have a penalty and they save the penalties, then you get a load of points on top of that. So picking a goalkeeper that's probably in a good defensive line and is going to keep clean sheets, but he's going to have shots taken at them and you expect him to save it, that's when then you get a few bonus points from that. So just to kind of explain to some of the new guys, that's kind of how I go through my squad building. It's defensively, goalkeepers that have got they're going to do well and they're going to keep clean sheets, but they could have a lot of shots go at them. Defensive line, go fullbacks as much as I can, and then in the midfield, progressive midfielders, preferably wingers that score goals, or attacking central attacking midfielders who get assists, and then up front you just want goal scorers. Yeah,
absolutely, very well explained. And just as a quick example, before his injury last season, Dean Henderson was one of the highest point scorers in FPL, one of the highest goalkeepers, because of how many shots he was facing and saving. He had a couple of penalty saves, didn't he? I think he saved 2 out of 4 penalties that were up against him. So that's how the goalkeepers can earn points. And you don't have to go for the high value ones like the Edisons and the Allisons, because there might be more value in a £4.5 million goalkeeper that takes a lot of shots but saves a lot of shots as well. There's Ramirez, I think, was one that interested me. But in terms of so I have got Onana. I've got Onana and Turner. And in fact, I'll bring up my team now, just so we can reference it. So I have, again, I've made like Lemmy, I haven't made any subs, but I have made a couple of changes in terms of my formation. I've changed my formation. I've gone to 3-5-2, and I have actually switched out Onana for Turner. I think there's more likelihood of Turner getting points this weekend than Onana, who's facing Tottenham. Because he is a liability. He is a liability. He should have conceded a penalty right at the end of that Wolves game. It's only top six bias and a VAR bias that didn't get Wolves a well-earned point out, or a chance to get a well-earned point out of that game, because they actually surprised me. I think their manager, he did a good job with Bournemouth last season, and he's the way he's playing and the way he's going at it, especially at Man U at Old Trafford, the way he went for it. I think obviously they were unlucky not to come away with anything. They did miss a hatful of chances. Onana made a couple of good saves, but to be fair, they were wasteful in front of goal. But yeah, so I've switched my Turner out, Onana out for Turner, and I've gone back to a back three. I've actually dropped Luke Shaw for this game, so I could bring Mbeumo into my midfield, who was sat on my bench last week and got 7 points from scoring a penalty. So I've gone 3-5-2, and the only one I was tempted to do, as mentioned earlier in the stream, was to swap out Wilson actually for a 1 year. I would have bought a 1 year straight swap for Wilson, but I actually fancy an upset this weekend in terms of I fancy Newcastle to beat Man City. Man City are a team that don't drop any, that if they do drop points, they drop them before Christmas. They drop them early on in the season. They don't drop anything after Christmas. They go on this runaway steamroller type of form, don't they? And they don't even pick up a draw. It's just win after win. So I think if they're going to lose any points early on, tomorrow's Saturday. I think it's a Saturday or Sunday. I'll bring up the fixtures in a second. Will be the best chance for anybody to get any points off Man City early on in the season. I think will probably be Newcastle this weekend, and I will bring up the fixtures just here, so we can have a little bit of a rundown. So obviously we kick off the weekend tomorrow night. Nottingham Forest playing Sheffield United. We don't need to go into our feelings on that, unless you want to, mate. If you want to say, give your prediction for that game. You got any thoughts on the match?
I mean, it's a must-win, really. I feel I would have liked. I've been kind of saying this quite a lot this week. The way that the fixtures have fell, I feel, is a bit unfortunate for us, because we've got some of the toughest away games, and then sandwiched in between those, we've got 2 of the 3 possibly easiest home games, where you've got no real run of form to go into them. If I could have had this game against Sheffield United, where we've got a solid team with transfer windows done, we know exactly what we're going into, game week, game out, I feel we'd absolutely steamroll them. But there's just there's a corridor of uncertainty, for a cricket term there, where it's just, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We should win, and we have to win, just to kind of put a bit of a staple on how we're going to do this season. But yeah, I feel a lot of people kind of expecting a lot out of us, because obviously Sheffield United, they've done nothing this window apart from get rid of their best players, and they've still got Paul Heckingbottom in, who I just despise with a passion. But it would be lovely to just absolutely win that game comfortably, which we didn't really see too often last season, if at all. It would be nice to see that kind of improvement from last season to this season, where we just have teams that are lower down in the league come to us and we just win and just don't have to worry about it. But I don't think I can remember the last time that Forest played a game where we were winning and I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's true. And unfortunately, we went to a couple of games early on last season that we were expected to win, didn't we? I think Bournemouth was last
that
one.
Bournemouth game still haunts me, and that's
it still does me.
Concerned.
Because even at half time, we don't want to go too much on the Forest run, but we both looked at each other at half time. It's like we were 2-0 up, and like, I don't know how we're 2-0 up. And then the second half was just an abomination. But yeah, we don't want to stray too much into Forest talk, because this is a FPL stream for everybody, basically. But yeah, going on to the fixtures then. So there's no early kickoffs on the Saturday. First, there's 3 o'clock kickoffs, as you can see there out of the 3 o'clock kickoffs, just in terms of games that you'd be interested in watching, which one would you go for if you could pick one of those to watch Saturday afternoon?
Probably Fulham Brentford. I mean, Liverpool Bournemouth should be pretty straightforward. Wolves versus Brighton, I suppose, could be interesting as well, just to see how Wolves are actually doing. If it was a really bad game from Manchester United, or if we have actually genuinely underestimated how Wolves are going to perform, even if they've got rid of all of their top dollar players. But Fulham versus Brentford, I think there's been a lot of dispute about how both of those teams are going to do this season in comparison to questionably overachieving last year.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would have predicted both of those teams to finish as highly as they did last season. So they're both kind of being thrown around as possibly mid-table to possibly even maybe being relegation dogfight.
Well, let
So
me ask you that question. Where do you think they'll finish the season? Because I think it will be a bit different for at least one of those teams in comparison to where they finished last season.
I don't think I think both of them will probably finish lower than they did last season. I don't think they'll both do as well, and that's for different reasons. But one of the main reasons for both teams is the loss of the key talisman up front. I think it's pretty much nailed on that Fulham are losing Mitrovic now to the Saudi League, and Brentford missing Ivan Toney for half a season is obviously going to be a detriment to them. I've no doubt that they're going to be able to find other ways of scoring, but it's always going to be difficult when your top goal scorer is missing for half a season. So I'd be surprised if they both managed to finish as high as they did last year. I feel Fulham's probably going to have the worst of it out of the two.
That's my thought.
I feel Fulham could be in and around where we finish, and I'd like to think that we'd be looking at around between like 14 to 16. I think they could be part of that mini league of 3 teams.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Brentford might do all right. I think actually Tony not being, and I don't actually think Tony will play for them again. I think they'll sell him. I think he'll be sold in a January transfer window possibly. But I think they've got players who've always been itching up a bit to get in. You know, Wieser, who's a really good striker, who when he did play last season, he did well. He's going to get a lot more opportunity this year. He's already got off the mark, and Buemo is another one who will step up to the plate. They have got quality players, and they've got a really good manager. I've got a lot of respect for Thomas Frank. I think he's done things the right way. I like the way he's built his team, and he's kind of like that, kept that fortress mentality within their players, that, you know, it's us against them. And I think he's built a really good team and squad and ethic there. That's why I give them a bit more chance. I genuinely think Fulham might struggle. I think they might drop off a lot this season, but we'll certainly wait and see. Of those 3 o'clock kickoffs, for me, actually, one intriguement was the Wolves-Brighton game. Brighton, I just love watching them play. I think they're such a fantastic open team, young team as well, free-flowing. You've got goal threats from all over the pitch. We keep finding these superstars from anywhere and everywhere. And Ciso, Mitoma, who I'm surprised that no one really came in for, but they've got the money in the bank now. And if kind of alluded to, and again, I don't want to go on a Forest rant, but if Forest are going to follow anybody's way of doing things, it's got to be the Brighton model. I think they've got it bang spot on, and they've got another team who've got a very, very good manager. But I think their setup's good, which is why you can lose a manager like Graham Potter, who was doing really well for them, and bring De Zerbi in, and there's no drop off. In fact, I felt they played even better towards the end of the season under De Zerbi. And Wolves, I think I was really surprised by how they played against Man U. I thought Man U were poor, don't get me wrong, but I thought Wolves showed a lot in terms of spirit. So if they can carry on playing like that, and Gary O'Neill, he's got a mentality about him that seems to be rubbing off on his Wolves players already. And it'll be interesting to see that game, because I think it'll be a good end-to-end game, and there could be quite a lot of goals in that one. And then you got the evening kickoff. So we've got a late evening kickoff, but also the mid-evening kickoff, which is a Spurs Man U game, a really fascinating game there as well. I really fancy that Spurs will try and turn on the style at home. I see quite a few goals in this game. What do you reckon? What would you predict for the Spurs Man U game? And do you see it as a high scoring affair?
No, I kind of see it as the opposite, really. I feel with Spurs losing Kane, I just feel they're going to be trying to replace a massive part of their ability to score goals this season. Obviously, they brought in Richarlison.
Is Richarlison good enough to step up to that plate?
Well, no, I don't think anyone.
Obviously not to replace Harry Kane, but in the meantime.
No, I mean to replace Harry Kane, I don't think anyone really, other than if you were somehow managing to have enough money to bring Haaland over from City to Spurs, then maybe. But I don't think anybody else really is currently in the market to be able to just replace Harry Kane. So I feel they're going to struggle and they're going to have to completely adapt their style of play, because obviously his way of playing was kind of unique for Harry Kane. You often saw him, especially for England as well. You'd see him drop back in the midfield and help out there, and then kind of come towards more of like a deep playing striker role, and then have the wingers press up, and then he kind of just appear out of nowhere on the edge of the box and get the goal. So Richarlison's not going to be able to do that. He's more getting behind, try and do some keepy uppies on the wings, drawing players to get him to try and foul him and then run on. So I just feel like Spurs are going to struggle, especially with the first couple of seasons with trying to adapt. And then Manchester United are also having a bit of issues with the striker problems. And obviously, they were kind of reliant on Rashford last year to dig them out and get some goals for him. I still think they're in the. It depends if Rasmus Højlund's going to be the real deal or not. But again, with being a new transfer, it's always a bit sketchy. You never know how he's actually going to adapt to the Premier League. So I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring affair, but I'm quite happy to be proved wrong.
Do you see? So, do you give the edge to either team, or do you reckon it's going to play out as a draw on that one? If you were to predict a result,
if you had to give an edge, I'd probably give it to Man United, but it'd be very, very slim. I think this has just got 0-0 or maybe a 1-1 written on it. I don't think it's going to be heavily dominant for either team.
Any sneaky tips? Sneaky tips. Well, we've kind of said our tips. Just don't use your substitutions too soon. Don't use your wild cards too soon. I think there's some decent transfers probably in game week 3 to make. So my tip would probably be to hold on to your transfer if you haven't used it already this week, and make a double transfer in the following week, and get some Spurs and Chelsea players into your squad for the upcoming games. Then we go on to the late evening kickoff on the Saturday night, which is probably the game of the weekend. Man City versus Newcastle. I'm really looking forward to this game, mate. How do you see it?
Yes, it's definitely going to be a good game. And like you said earlier on in the stream, it could be one where Newcastle do come a bit and perform a bit of a blindside and somehow manage to leave the Etihad with 3 points, which it'd be great for the season, really. It'd be really open it up. And I know a lot of people are kind of pinning Man City as the Goliaths that are just completely unbeatable. So it'd be great in game week 2 to see them get knocked down a peg at home, their first home game of the season as well. That'd be really interesting to see. Whether we are going to see that or not, it's Man City who basically just won every single trophy that they could pretty much in the space of 12 months, other than the EFL Cup, which they got to the final of. So.
Did you watch your Super Cup was it Tuesday night? The Super Cup
I didn't. No, I didn't watch it. I've watched the highlights of it afterwards.
I've got to say, they were really pegged back. That was a good performance in terms of like frustrating Man City, because I think they were lucky to come away with that. Obviously, it went to penalties and it won on a penalty shootout. But yeah, it was a really great game to watch. I thought that's as average as I've seen Man City in quite a while, because I say towards the end of the season they were just like a runaway train. This game, the thing for me is how good Newcastle looked last week against a decent Aston Villa side. They made them look very ordinary, and I just think they've signed really well. Another team with a fantastic manager who's got his philosophy into this squad, and they're all playing for each other. And he's got an abundance of talent now that he can bring off the bench. Like alluded to last week, you're taking off your starters of Isak and Anthony Gordon, and you can bring on Callum Wilson and Harvey Barnes, and they both made an impact. So I think Newcastle's squad's a lot stronger, obviously, this season than it was last season. Tonali's a fantastic signing. I fancy them for a sneaky win. So I've gone for a 2-1 Newcastle on this game, but I expect it to be a really good game. And of course, Man City played midweek, so there was an annoyance from Pep that his game wasn't moved to the Sunday or the Monday, but the Premier League gave him the late kickoff on the Saturday. It'll be an interesting game, and we'll see if there's any tiredness in the legs, because Haaland played 90 minutes and quite a few of their players played full game. So it'll be interesting to see how they come out of that. Then we go into the Sunday fixtures, and if we have a quick look, Villa and Everton. I think Villa obviously got absolute roasting last week. I think they can bounce back, and I expect them to bounce back against Everton at home. They've got some quality players. Diaby is the one that seems to be getting the most traction at the moment. And he's one of the most transferred in players this week. Just another stat to throw at you guys. And he's one that I'm looking at as well. Do you think that they're going to be able to live up to the potential? Because my feeling is with Unai Emery, and he's done it in most of his clubs, is he's a very European focused manager. And once they start getting into Europe, the Conference League that we're in this season, which I think they're going to win. Once it gets into the European, he'll start playing his first stronger team in Europe rather than in the league. But they have got a lot stronger squad. Another team that is going to take him a little while, but they've really Unai Emery's made a massive impact. Obviously, as soon as he came in, they were around the relegation zone last season, and he got them into Europe by the end of the season. But they're up against an Everton team who, for me, are still quite a few players off being anywhere near away from the bottom of the table. I still see them struggling this season down near the relegation zone. What are your thoughts on these two teams in terms of how you see the game and how you see their seasons progressing?
Yeah, I mean, for the game specifically, I think Villa kind of have to bounce back after getting a bit of a roast in last week. So first game at home, and then trying to obviously recover and put a bit of a statement to say that was just a one-off. This is how we're actually going to play for the rest of the season. You've got to then do it against a team that just escaped relegation last year in Everton. So this one's pretty much on Aston Villa to turn up and get the result that should be predicted going into it. I don't think Everton are really going to have anything in them to try and nick it. It's going to be a case of, does the Aston Villa of last season turn up, or does the Aston Villa of last week turn up? That's going to be the only real chance that Everton have got to maybe try and nick a point, or maybe get all 3 points with a very slight 1-0. But I think that's very improbable. I see this as a Villa win. In terms of the season itself, I mean, this game is going to pretty much help guide us towards how Villa are going to do this year. I think lots of people pegged them to prove that last season wasn't just a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a one-season wonder where they managed to propel themselves by getting rid of Gerrard and being in the relegation zone to ending up playing European football this year. They're going to have to pretty much show that this is a statement of intent, and that's where they plan on finishing every season. So I think they can do that. As for Everton, I don't know if they're going to be able to springboard back up. They've been dancing with that relegation line a bit too much for the past few years. So I can see them being right back down there amongst us again as well. Whether they're part of that 14 to 16 mini league that I think, or if they're 17th and below, we'll see in the first few weeks, I guess. But I think they're definitely not going to be aiming to finish much higher up than we are.
So just to quickly answer this question. So how many weeks should you plan your squad for, and what is an ideal game week? So it really depends on who you've got the volume of players in. So for example, I've got 3 Man U players in my team. You might have 3 Arsenal players or several Chelsea players and so on and so forth. So you're basically looking at for your potential highest point scorers, and you're looking at their fixtures. So as I've mentioned a couple of times, from week 3 onwards, so from next week's game weeks, Chelsea have got a really good run of games. Tottenham have got a really good run of games. Arsenal have got a really good run of games already. So they're the kind of teams you look at, and you kind of plan. You can plan 4 or 5 weeks in advance with your squad, looking at what fixtures are coming ahead. But as we said, there's no guarantee for any team to be any team can be any other team in this league, and this is the beauty of the Premier League. But from an FPL point of view, that's where you're probably looking at how you're planning long term or medium to long term with your squad selections, and it is dependent on those teams obviously performing, the top players in those teams performing as well. So that is a little way you can look at it, but like I say, nothing's set in stone. But if you go by the experts, as I've mentioned a few times, that's probably the advice that they would give you. So look at the team's fixtures where you got the most players in your squad and see where they're going. So we're going on to the second game on the Sunday, which is the West Ham Chelsea. Chelsea, I've tipped up honestly to do really well this season, but I reckoned without Nkuku. I forgot about his injury. If he was fully fit, I'd be really, really confident that we're going to finish high this season. But their transfer business isn't over. Alluded to on a previous FFTV stream about their interest in our boy Jono. But I really fancy Chelsea to do really well this season. And by that, I mean challenging for the championship, because one of the things they do, and I mentioned in the last stream, that they'll have a really poor season where they'll finish outside the European places. And then the following season, they go and win the league because they don't have the European pressure. The teams around them seem to get weaker, but they've done it. They've gone through that cycle on several occasions. If you look back over the last few times, Chelsea have won the league. They've had a really poor season before. Then the following season, they've gone and literally run away with the league. They've got a chance to do really well this year as well. West Ham could be in danger of losing again some key players. Paqueta has been linked with, is it with Newcastle? Who's even Man U, isn't it? With City, sorry, yes, to replace De Bruyne potentially. And usually when Man City are interested in the player, it's just a matter of time. So they could be weakened. I don't fancy they're going to do well this season. This game I'm putting down as an away win. Would you think any differently, or would you give West Ham a hope in this game?
I wouldn't say I'd give them a hope. I think they'd probably be happy with going away with this with a draw, similar to like if we were playing, like I'd say going to Arsenal or like Manchester United last season when we played them at home. You'd be happy with getting a draw, but you kind of go into it not necessarily expecting to get much more than that. You'd just like to see a close game. I think it could be a close game, obviously with Chelsea bouncing back from the absolute disaster of last season, getting a new manager and still constantly bringing in new players. It's always going to be interesting, as we learned for the first half of last season. I agree with you. I think Chelsea are going to bounce back pretty well this year. Whether they're going to be able to pull it out in game week 2 against West Ham, I don't know, but I'd still be favouriting Chelsea if any team really to get a result there, but I don't see them kind of running away with it. So it's kind of one of those where you just expected another close game, maybe one goal nicks it.
But they definitely look stronger this season, and I do like their chances. And then the last game of the weekend, which is a Monday night kickoff, Crystal Palace and Arsenal. Palace still got some fantastic young players. They're in danger of losing Elise, but they've still got Eze, and they've still got others around him who I think obviously he's the one player that hasn't missed a single minute since Hodgson's come in. Hodgson obviously really likes him. He's building a team around him. But they haven't really done enough in the transfer window for me so far. I think it'll be a good game. I'm looking forward to this game, but I fancy Arsenal to probably run away with it quite easily. I'm going for a 3-1 in this fixture. And I fancy that some of my Arsenal players will get me some points in this game. Have you just to you've got Saka in there? Have you got Martinelli in your squad as well?
No, I've got just Saka as my Arsenal contingent, and then I've got Eze also as my Crystal Palace contribution for this game. But Eze is my first man on the bench, so he won't really feature unless one of my starting 11 or starting 10 outfielders is ruled out for the week.
Yeah. Okay. That's a rundown of this weekend's fixtures. Well, like I say, I mean, I think there's some great games in terms of entertainment value on offer this weekend, and I think there's plenty to keep you interested. And this is the thing with FPL; it kind of gives you an interest in almost most games. It's like when I never did pools and things like that, but you'd have some interest in every single game. You might do a little accumulator on the weekend, which I don't condone or recommend, but each to their own. But it just gives you an interest in the games, and that's what I love about the FPL. You don't have to take it too seriously, but I would recommend you do take it seriously, because I want to win this league and I want to make it competitive. So guys, we will be handing out a wooden spoon for the first manager to kind of give up and throw the towel in, and you can see, you'll notice when you see that we've got players in who've been injured for like 3 weeks, and it's quite easy to pick out the ones who've given up. But I want you guys to enjoy it. I want these streams to be fun. If you have any suggestions, any questions, please don't be shy to ask. I've got amazing Dino behind the scenes bringing up your comments in the chat as he goes along. And he did ask a question about the triple captain, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, but yeah, I'll get your opinion on this first and see if it differs from mine. How would you play your triple captain, and would you use it in a double game week?
Traditionally, yes, I'd always use it in a double game week, especially on you at that point in the season when you've got double game weeks kind of happening. You've basically built a good core of a team where you've got consistent point scorers, and you want to try and use it realistically on like your Haalands or someone who's going to have the opportunity of, especially if it's someone like Haaland where he's got a double game week where he's playing 2 teams right down the bottom, and you're possibly thinking he might be able to get 5 or 6 goals. At that point, it's just you can't really expect to get more points out of a triple captain in a regular week in comparison to that. So that's always how I've used it. Some people do the opposite, and obviously we've seen the top team of the week this week used a triple captain. I think it was on Haaland because he had him on like 36 points. So you must have used it in game week 1, which again is a good tactic. If you're putting it on someone who you know is going to be bagging goals and they're playing a team that's just got promoted in Burnley, then yeah, it's always going to be a good shout because you expect him to be able to kind of run over it.
That's a good point. I forgot to mention that when I bought Elanga Golden Boots team up, but yes, he did. He used his triple captain chip on.
I think he did. Unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Let me just bring it up. Bring the screen up a little bit bigger, because he got. Yeah, he did.
Actually, I think I'm wrong. I apologize.
Didn't he? Let me see what I got.
26 points, and he got 26 points for me. I've just checked.
Yeah. There is one of the guys in our mini league who has used it. Definitely, because I did see it because he was an early leader. Obviously, he didn't have much around him, but yeah. So a couple of people have used this early on. Triple captain, basically, you get triple. The captain normally gets double points to what he normally gets. So Haaland got 13 points for his goals against Burnley, and he had 2 goals and his performance in the Burnley game. And then if you've captained him, you'll get double the amount. But if you've triple captained him using your chip, you'll get triple the points. So he would have got 39 points if you'd use your triple captain. I know one of the guys in our mini league has it, but it wasn't our lead at the time. But anyway, guys, thank you for everybody who's stuck around so far. We have waffled on a little bit more longer than we expected to, but it's always good to talk with friends, and it's always easy to talk to them here. And we another one, like we met through football, didn't we? We had our own little channel for a little while, kept in touch, and it's great to have you on these streams, mate, and love to get you on a few more as well. But in terms of like the season as a whole, what are you looking for? Because last season was a really strange season for Forest fans in a lot of ways. Like yourself, some of us had never seen us in the Premier League, and on top of that, we had a World Cup break right in the middle of it, which is something that's never happened before. Thank you, Crypto. But how do you see this season panning out? A lot more structure to it, obviously. Will you be overexcited now, or are you going to wait to see how it pans out before you start basically picking your favourites for relegation and relegation and European places and things like that?
I mean, it is always fun seeing people's predictions, and then they always base what they've managed to get. They always, at the end of the season, they always base it on what they've predicted at this point, and you always see it's absolutely miles off. There's no way that you can predict how the entire season is going to pan out at this point. I think pretty much every single Premier League pundit, Premier League commentator, anyone that makes any kind of content or is a content creator that features anything about Premier League had Bournemouth, plumb last season. I don't think there's there's nobody that would have said that they would have finished anywhere higher than 20th. and then they run away with it. A lot of them would have said that Forest would have got relegated, especially after our start of the season, up until Leicester away. A lot of people would have said, yeah, Forest are definitely going to get relegated. There's no way that they can get out of it. No one would have said that two pretty big clubs and reasonably well-established Premier League teams in Leeds and Leicester would have got relegated in the same season. So it's impossible to call really and really put some kind of accurate prediction on it until well into kind of next year. But it is fun to kind of look at it now. I think the only time you can really look at it is after the transfer window's closed. The dust has settled a little bit on it to the start of the season. You kind of see who the runners and riders are. At this point, all I'm kind of looking for, especially out of Forest, is just a bit of stability. I want to kind of have that's how I'm judging our kind of performance throughout the season. I know you guys, and I think it was on a Gore podcast you did, you were kind of saying, what would you do? What would be your kind of criteria for success for Forest season? You always said like, right, we need to finish this many points higher than we did last year, or we need to finish this many places. I judge my criteria for a successful season this year is a consistent starting 11 and subs being made, a consistent starting formation that we all know exactly how we want to be trying to play and how we are going to play in a game, and just somehow managing to fix the injuries crisis that we had last year, and just not having as many people out. Just having consistency this year has to be the criteria for us to do well. Consistency and finishing, just having consistency in general, I feel is going to be a key part of propelling us higher in the league. From there, we can then kind of build on platforms. We know who we want to be trying to build teams around. At the moment, we're kind of trying to build it around just Morgan Gibbs-White and Taiwo Awoniyi and try and build it around them. But once you kind of build more of a core, we can then start going forwards. But that is all I want out of these first games, is don't lose any more critical players. Having Felipe and Niakate out at the moment is absolutely killing us at the back. We can't have that in any more positions in the spine, and then just having more stability and consistency. We've managed to kind of get out of game week 1 with that by showing a bit of fight after being 2-0 down last season. We would have capitulated and that game would have been 6-7-0. So we've made a good start. We just have to build on it.
Yeah, and you kind of like touched on what the theme of the show is basically don't panic. If you feel like your team hasn't made a good start, don't panic. Don't be too tempted to make massive changes. Wait and see how the games play out. Wait and see what players get picked. Wait and see how the transfer window ends, because there will be. I think this is going to be a transfer window where the deadline date is going to be another record-breaking one. I just fancy it. The way it's working out, and way the dominoes are just starting to fall now. Major domino was obviously Harry Kane moving on, which brings more funds into Tottenham. Chelsea will just spend money for the sake of spending money. I don't think Man U are done with their spending either. And it's a lot of the big clubs have got a lot of work to do. So don't be too panicked if your team hasn't made a good start. There's still a hell of a long way to go. Sit tight, see how it works out. Wait till the end of a transfer window, and then if you need to make any changes, make changes then. But don't panic is the theme of the show, and well explained there as well, Lemmy. But thank you for joining us, and thank you for everybody in the chat. Thank you for sticking with us. It's been a fantastic stream. We've almost hit an hour. We said we'd do 35 minutes, didn't we? Or 25 to 30 minutes, and it's been an hour. But it's, like I said, it's easy to talk to my football friends, and I really enjoy these streams, and really love having you guys in here. And thank you for joining us and giving us something to talk about. But FPL is going to obviously be back next week as well. So we'll do the preview for game week 3, and I'll have a look back on how you guys do over the weekend. But if you haven't made your changes, you've got until 6:15 as the deadline tomorrow for your transfers for game week 2. So if you do need to make any changes, make sure you make them by then. If you've got any injuries, make sure you've moved them out. If you're going to make any squad changes, make sure you've done it before 6:15 tomorrow. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us, and we will hopefully see you again soon. Watch out for all the streams on our various channels. We've got the watch along tomorrow on FFTV, and then we've got the basically the reaction from myself and Dino after the game. Anybody who's at the game tomorrow, please join us in the fan zone about half an hour to an hour before kickoff, and we'll see you there. Other than that, we'll see you next week, and make sure you guys tune into all our channels across